Hello, welcome everybody. We're gonna give people a couple of minutes to come into the webinar. So we'll start at about 11:02. If you have questions, there is a Q&A feature in Zoom. So please go ahead and ask your questions there. And most likely we'll get to those questions at the end. And any questions that we're not able to get to, we will answer outside of this Zoom. Also, we are recording this, and the recording will be available at the same link that was used to register for the webinar. So you'll be able to see the recording of this probably about tomorrow is probably when the recording will be processed and available. Stephen, Jonas, do you see this thing right here where it says somebody raised their hand on my screen?
Not sharing on the screen, no.
Yeah,
I do see it, but it's not shared through you. It's
okay.
It's through Zoom.
Gotcha. Okay.
Chris, no, this. Oh, it's not Chris. There's no R. No, this is not about enterprise. This is about community edition.
If you're just coming in, we're going to get started in about a minute. Let people have a chance to come in. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here. Okay, it is 11:02, so we will go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here with us. This is our BloodHound update for fall of 2023. And so this is who we are. My name is Andy Robbins. I'm one of the co-creators of BloodHound, along with Rohan Vazirker and Will Schroeder. I'm now principal product architect for BloodHound Enterprise and BloodHound Community Edition. Jonas, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Jonas, and I'm product architect in the same team as Andy. So yeah, I'm also working on like implementing new features into BloodHound as new research is published, and yeah, helping out with that.
And I'm Stephen Hinck. I lead product management for BloodHound Enterprise and Community Edition. So I'm kind of at the center of engineering and success and support and product discovery with Andy and Jonas, and just kind of helping us guide and find the direction we want to go.
Yeah. So that's us. Here's our agenda for today. First, we'll take you through a history of the evolution of the BloodHound graph. We'll look at the current year in review. We'll give you a preview of a new exciting feature, which is ADCS attack path support in BloodHound. And then Stephen is going to take you at the end through a look into the future of BloodHound regarding ADCS and some other interesting things as well. So when we first released BloodHound, it was in 2016. And so it was me, Rohan Vazirker, and Will Schroeder. If you're not familiar with what BloodHound is, BloodHound uses a branch of mathematics called graph theory to find attack paths that are really, really difficult to find by hand. The current coverage for BloodHound is on-prem Active Directory and Azure, which means Intra ID, and also a lot of things in Azure Resource Manager. BloodHound was originally created by me, Rohan, and Will, and today it is maintained by the BloodHound Enterprise engineering team. BloodHound Community Edition is what we're here to talk about today. BloodHound Community Edition is free and open source software, and so you can audit the source code yourself at this link, and you can also see instructions for building BloodHound from source at that link as well. When we first released BloodHound, this was the design of the graph. So the only thing the BloodHound tracked at that time were users, groups, and computers in Active Directory. And the only relationships it tracked were where users were logged on, what users belonged to what security groups, what groups belonged to what groups, what computers belonged to what groups, and also which principals had admin rights on which computers. That was it. 3 nodes, 3 classes of edges. And it really changed the way that our team worked on pen tests. And it greatly, greatly accelerated our ability to discover and execute attack paths in pretty much any environment that you could imagine. Over time, the design of the graph has evolved and grown. So this was August 2016. In October 2017, we released the ACL update, which included edges that represented the abusable ACE entries on securable objects in Active Directory. Still just 3 different node types, though. In March of 2018, we released the GPO and containers update. And so here you can start to see the graph design is really starting to get pretty complex. In November of 2020, we introduced support for Azure. So we have a distinct graph separate from the on-prem Active Directory graph. And in the Azure graph, we introduced all kinds of different node types and new edge types as well. Next, we're going to look at 2023 in review, and Steven's going to take over here.
All right. Hey, everyone. So looking at the year in review, we're going to start off basically right where Andy just left off. The first release of the year was the 4.3 release. It was the final release for the legacy version of BloodHound Legacy. In that release, we added a pretty significant expansion, specifically focused on Azure, including a lot of coverage within that resource manager portion, so the IaaS part of Azure, as well as Microsoft Graph. This included 19 different edges across a lot of things around the various apps, function apps, logic apps, all that kind of thing. As well as a bunch of different new object types, again, different types of apps, as well as some of the roles and those things in Graph. So it's a pretty significant expansion. Andy wrote a blog, basically how to get global admin more often and more frequently. So it's been a good time with those and seen a lot of improvement in there from that. We got some great community contributions in there as well. Around getting more kind of abuse documentation from Unix hosts. A lot of us have historically run from Windows hosts on those engagements. And so getting the ability to help folks out who are not running from Windows base was awesome. Fixed a bunch of things and updated things around queries and collections and ingestion accuracy. And we also got a contribution for adding a new edge into Active Directory, which is the dump SMSA password edge. Again, this was the last update that we did to the legacy BloodHound platform that was the old Electron app, which takes us to the next slide, which is going to be BloodHound CE. This is the future of BloodHound. It was a complete rewrite. So for those of you who did not see any of the presentations, whether it be our own webinar or joining us at Black Hat, at Arsenal, or within our booth, those are recorded and should be available for you to go check out. And I'd highly recommend it because Andy and Rohan did a great job of walking through kind of how this looks and feels. But this changes the product from a figure out how to deploy Neo4j and run an Electron app to a fully containerized API first design product with multi-user support. So now you have a very traditional database, web, and UI layer. We're able to do a lot of neat things with kind of making this cleaner and easier. If you actually go to the next page, Andy, I want to talk about it while this is up here. This is how easy it is to deploy. If you've got Docker already installed on your system, you can run a one-line command and get started with BloodHound's Community Edition. It's pretty sweet. We tested this out with a bunch of different folks before we went live because we knew that one of the big problems with the legacy version of BloodHound was how difficult it was to deploy. And we were not big fans of that. And so being able to change this from some kind of long kind of complex process into something very simple that just about anybody could do in a couple of minutes was a big improvement that we saw in the product. With that, we did our best to bring all of the functionality that everybody was used to into the new product, but we had to draw a line. There's a lot of stuff that's been there. The product is 6 years old, and so as we started going through, additional steps, that was where we started bringing more of that in. So if you want to go to the next one, Andy, the first release after that 5.0 launch of BloodHound Community Edition, we're starting to try and make up for some of that stuff, or make things easier to use. So being able to do autocomplete and syntax highlighting in Cypher is honestly one of my favorite features. It makes it so much easier to just kind of use it almost like an IDE, to be able to type something and go, yes, that's exactly what I want. I don't need to finish typing that word. And then to have kind of errors underlined when it's like, hey, did you know that you spelled and wrong? I don't know how many times I've misspelled and, but that's my problem, and it does a good job of letting me know that I missed that. And some other things that we added, MFA support is a big deal, right? We want to make sure folks can secure their data. And as we have a layer in between Cypher, we did some work to improve Cypher there in August. If you want to go to the next slide, Andy. So 509, I think was a two-part on the slide. The first one, we added in what used to be the spacebar search in Legacy Bloodhound. I don't know how many folks actually were aware of that functionality.
Not
but
many,
in
I don't
Bloodhound
think.
Legacy, in Bloodhound Legacy, if you hit spacebar, you could search what's on the current graph. And so we brought that back in, made it a little bit easier to see, as it is right there on the screen, that you can search those current results, so you can take a look and find that thing that you're pretty sure exists on the graph. Go ahead and go to the next one. We brought back those edge context menus that were there, so you could click on an edge. You can get information about, source, target node, any properties around there. So things like, is it an ACL? What type of trust is it? Those kinds of things. And not shown here on the little screenshot is all of that abuse information. So what do I need to do in order to make use of this edge that I see? There's a has session edge. How do I actually do something with that? This one also added web-based gzip compression support, which is largely a behind the scenes thing. But what it means is that every time you talk to your Bloodhound tenant, if your browser supports gzip, which presuming you are on something of any recent age as a browser, it does, which will make it faster and quicker for you to actually work with the product. In October, we added the ability to export that JSON. Folks who'd been using the API were used to this, were familiar with it, and you could already do that. But being able to pull it out of as you're already looking at something, walking around the product or exploring something was obviously very helpful. So we pulled that in into the 5.10 release. Next one, Andy. And then we also did some expansion on the schema. So for those unaware, the schema is what drives things like those friendly names that you see. So when you see something like SID filtering enabled, that's what makes that look nicely and easily readable versus what we may have as a variable within the database schema. It also powers the autocomplete that we do within the Cypher query engine. So expanding that out makes it easier to use for everybody. And I want to make sure that I give credit to all of our fantastic community members who have contributed throughout the year. So this is in alphabetical order, all the folks that I was able to pull from GitHub that contributed in 2023, whether it's simple little changes, fixing typos, or big contributions of capabilities, coverage, bug fixes. It all is super important to us. We're grateful for your contribution. We're grateful for the conversation and for challenging us. And I wanted to make sure that everybody who did contribute to the product did get a nice shout out. We really appreciate you. And we're grateful for that.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about ADCS, and we're going to be looking at an early access preview. And so there's still more work to do, but we're going to show you the highlights of what we have built here. Before we do that, we need to take some time to acknowledge prior work and do some acknowledgements on people who have contributed in this space. So first of all, we want to acknowledge our coworkers, Will Schroeder and Lee Christensen, who are both researchers here at SpecterOps. They authored the certified pre-owned research paper, which I've had open in a tab in my browser now for about 2.5 years. So, and I think a lot of other people have as well. So I've learned a lot from them and from that paper. And I think their work did a lot to bring a lot of attention to this space. They also authored Certify and Rubius, which are tools that you can use for actually abusing or exercising these different attack paths. You can find them on Twitter at these links right here. That's Harmjoy with a 0, and then Tifkin has a underscore at the end of his username there.
Sneaky.
Yeah. Also, just as importantly, we want to recognize Oliver Luwak. Oliver Luwak. I apologize for messing that up. Oliver made several significant contributions in this space. So Oliver created a Python version of an abuse capability to request certificates, enroll in certificates, and do a lot of the attacks described by Will and Lee and some other folks in a tool called CertiPy. Oliver also created a branch of BloodHound, which included the ability to ingest data from CertiPy for certificate authorities, cert templates, etc. And then in that GUI, in that fork of the BloodHound GUI, he has several different features that allow you to more easily audit who has enroll rights on what template, and more easily discover the attack paths that traverse the ADCS infrastructure. And so you can find Oliver on Twitter at this link right here. And there's, again, an underscore right there. And Oliver also has an excellent blog on Medium, which I have read his posts several times and learned a lot from. So we want to say thank you to Oliver for all of his work and all of his contributions in this space. When Lee and Will put out the original paper and blog posts surrounding certified pre-owned, they also acknowledged several people, which we want to acknowledge now as well. I'm going to say some of these names incorrectly, and I apologize in advance. But Jean Marceau is a manager at Wavestone. He put out work very similar to what Will and Lee put out at I think about a week before Will and Lee put their work out. Benjamin Delpy needs no introduction, the creator of Mimikatz, and this at the Bank of France. I apologize. Christophe Falta. This name, which I don't know how to say. Mike Jankowski-Lorick. The authors of several different blog posts at Keyfactor, who are credited as the Keyfactor technical team on those blog posts. Elke Stangl, Carl Sorkvist, Siri Coburn, Brad Hill, and somebody who I've been talking to for like the past 10 or 15 years is Mark Gamache. So we want to make sure we acknowledge all these folks as well for their contributions in this space. And so thank you for sharing your work publicly, and thank you for all of your hard work in understanding this space and in explaining it, and creating tooling and documentation, et cetera. Thank you. Additionally, I personally want to shout out these 4 folks right here who have made contributions in the ADCS world that I got a lot of value out of, with learning the mechanics of the systems and with learning a little more in depth about like how the different abuse scenarios emerge and the mechanics of how they actually work. So Daniel Scheit, who's a pen tester at Forwerk Group, Vadim Podans, I apologize for butchering your name. Vadim is a PKI consultant at PKI Solutions Incorporated. Andrea Perini, who is a senior incident response consultant at Simperis, and of course, Charlie Clark, who's senior security consultant at MDSec. So those 4 people in particular, I want to say thank you to for your work and your contributions in this area. I learned a lot from your work and your writings, so thank you very much. Also, on the BloodHound Enterprise team, there are several folks who have been working very hard under a lot of pressure to make this release possible. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Jonas, who has learned more about ADCS than maybe anybody else who we've mentioned so far. So thank you to Jonas. And
yeah, well, that's because I started from scratch, so I had to learn a lot just to do anything.
Yeah. Also, Rohan Vazirker, James Barnett, Yuli Rangel, Eli Miller, Stephen Loki, and Dylan Lees. And also Urshad. Why not? Also Urshad. So I want to say thank you to them for all of the really, really hard work that they put into this. They have been creating new functional primitives in BloodHound so that BloodHound can actually do the things that we're going to show you in this demo. So thank you to all of them and everybody else in the BloodHound Enterprise team. Okay, so let's get to some details. But first, if I missed you, if you've done work in this space, please reach out to me at that email address and let me know. Give me a link to the work and then also to your social media profile so that I can make sure that we credit you appropriately when we start to put this content out in written form. So please, please, please reach out to me if I miss you, and please accept my apologies if I did miss you. Okay. With ADCS and BloodHound, we are introducing 5 new node types. Root CA, which is a CA that exists under the certificate authorities container in the configuration naming context in the forest root domain. Enterprise CA is the second new node type we're introducing. This corresponds to the PKI enrollment service object class set of objects that exist under the enrollment services container in the configuration naming context. NT auth store is a special object that exists under the PKI services container in the configuration naming context. Cert templates, which are exactly what they sound like. And we're not doing the specific thing related to the AIA CA object class yet, but we are starting to collect these for reasons that we will talk about at a future date. So you probably won't see this object class show up unless you're looking at like who has control of what objects in ADCS. Then you'll see this start to pop up. But the attack path that's relevant to this object class, we're not going to be releasing in this early access release or in the general availability release. So these are the 5 new node types. Let me take a drink of my coffee and we'll get to the new edge types. We have a lot of new edge types. I'm going to go through these quickly so we can get to the demo. Root CA4 connects a root CA to the domain object, creating a relationship from that object to the domain that BloodHound then uses during its post-processing to understand which CAs are actually trusted as root CAs in the environment. Enterprise CA4 will connect PKI enrollment service objects to their corresponding root CA object if the root CA actually does have a corresponding enrollment service object. NT auth store 4 connects the NT auth store object to the domain. This is used internally. You probably won't see this pop up too often. You will see it pop up in our demo. Published 2 connects cert templates to their enterprise CA nodes to establish the relationship of a template being published to or being enabled by a particular CA. Managed certificates comes from the security descriptor on the CA on the host hosting the CA and is the managed certificates privilege. Same thing with managed CA. This also comes from that same object. Golden cert is an edge that will be created if a computer is hosting a CA service, which is a root CA for the domain and is also trusted for NT authentication in the domain. And the attack there is that you can pivot to that system and you can mint your own golden certificates and impersonate anybody in the forest without having to worry about any of the other stuff. Enroll is a privilege connecting a principal to a cert template or to a enterprise CA, and it means that that principal has the enroll privilege against that object. Hosts CA service connects the computer to the CA object that the system is hosting. So it lets you see where in the environment these different services are actually running. Write PKI enrollment flag and write PKI name flag. You'll see these later, and these have to do with control of LDAP objects regarding escalation 5 that let you put the system into a state that will then let you do escalation 1. Issued signed by will connect CAs to each other in their certification chain. So a sub CA will be issued or signed by a root CA, for example. And if you have a typical 3-tier CA system, you'll see that connection between those different CAs so that you can map out what the PKI hierarchy is between those CAs. And BloodHound also makes extensive usage of this when it is doing its ADCS privilege escalation discovery for you. Enroll on behalf of is regarding escalation 3. Jonas knows more about this than I do. Same with delegated enrollment agent. So I'm not gonna talk about these right now. Trusted for NT auth will connect a CA to the NT auth store object, which means that the CA is trusted for NT authentication in the domain where that NT auth store object lives. Lots of complexity. And you will see in our demo that we deal with a lot of this complexity for you. Also, you will see edges that look like this. ADCS escalation 1, 3, escalation 4, A, B, C, D, escalation 5, A, B, C, D, E, F. You'll see what these mean in the demo, but essentially these will connect a principal to the domain where BloodHound has done the calculation for you to determine that that principal can actually do one of these different privilege escalations. So you don't need to do the manual hunting for what the path is from a user to domain admin, for example, through an ADCS escalation primitive. BloodHound will do that for you, and you'll see how it does that in the demo. ADCS escalation 6, 7, 9, 10, and then more, possibly. We'll see. But this is what we're signing up for now. Before Steven took over earlier, this is where I left off with the evolution of the graph design. So on the left, you have Azure, and on the right, you have on-prem Active Directory. So this was basically the design of the graph since April of 2023. With the upcoming release that introduces ADCS attack paths, keep your eye on the right-hand side of this image. Nope. I must have deleted the slide.
Go one more slide, Andy.
There we go. Okay, so here's where we were. Here's where we're going to be in this ADCS release. So many different new node types, and the complexity of the graph is something that makes John not happy.
John is our director of engineering.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of new edges.
How long till that
Positive
right side's
notes.
just a solid circle, Andy?
Yeah, probably pretty soon. Probably pretty soon. Okay, so I'm going to show you a demo. This is a video demo. I highly recommend that you not do live demos. It's not worth it. So in this video demo, we have an environment here on the right-hand side, which is called Escalation 5. And it's because that's the environment that I'm using to do the Escalation 5 research and planning right now for the feature. This is the BloodHound Community Edition interface. So I want to know, is there a path to go from demo user to domain admins? And yes, there is. So we will rearrange these to make it look a little bit better. And what you'll see is that this path starts from demo user. Demo user is a member of the domain users group, and BloodHound has calculated that the domain users principal has the ability to do ADCS escalation 1 within the escalation 5 domain. This domain contains the users container, and the users container contains the domain admins group. So if you're looking at this as a pen tester, you can kind of see this similarly to how you might see DC sync. So if you have DC sync, you can just DC sync the credentials of anybody in that domain. If you have ADCS escalation 1 against the domain, you can do escalation 1 and impersonate anybody in that domain and also anybody in that forest. So when you click on this edge, this ADCS escalation 1 edge, you will see on the right-hand side this edge entity panel pop up. You'll have this general information accordion, which will kind of explain to you what this means. And so you have a short statement and you have a somewhat longer, more verbose statement. And it just basically tells you like domain users can do escalation 1 in the domain because of a certain combination of different factors that have come together. Now, we also have Windows abuse. So we'll list out the particular commands that an attacker can run to actually perform that attack, opposite considerations, and also references. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Putting this feature into BloodHound came with a lot of requirements. We needed to be able to surface to you attack paths that traverse the ADCS objects, hosts, etc., in order to allow you to do what I did here, which is just arbitrary node-to-node pathfinding. So from one node to another, is there a connection? Is there a path that includes ADCS attack paths? If the answer is yes, then BloodHound needs to surface that in a way that is performant and in a way that is easy to understand, and also in a way that fits into the existing UX and other product design considerations that have existed forever. And also, we have to, as best as we can, we have to future-proof the work that we're doing here so that we don't paint ourselves into a corner and have to fundamentally redesign this feature because we didn't think about something or we didn't learn about something beforehand. So if you're a pen tester and you see that domain users can do escalation 1, you need to understand how, because you need to know what is the template that the domain users group can enroll into, and what CA is that template published to, because you're going to enroll in that template targeting that particular CA. And also, you need to be able to audit that the tool is actually correct about what it's telling you. And so for escalation 1 to emerge, several different things have to come into play. You have to have enrollment rights on a template with certain configurations. You have to have enrollment rights on a CA that thing is published to. But also, that CA needs to be trusted for NT authentication. And that CA either needs to be a root CA already, or in that PKI hierarchy, it needs to chain up to a root CA. If any of those things are not true, then we would be producing a false positive. So we have worked very, very hard to make sure that when BloodHound tells you somebody can do escalation 1, that it is correct. And so if you're a pen tester, you need to know, how exactly do I abuse this? There's a new item down here on the Edge entity panel called composition. When you click on this, it's going to show you everything that has gone in to analyzing and producing this edge. So when we click on composition, BloodHound will do the calculation for you, which it did beforehand when data was ingested. It has done the calculation again to understand and help you understand as a pen tester how exactly can domain users do escalation 1. And so looking at this, the domain users group has enroll rights on this template called CT1. This template is published to a CA called escalation 5 BC CA. Additionally, because the domain users group is effectively part of the authenticated users group or principal, and because authenticated users has enroll rights on that CA, domain users has enroll rights on the CA and the template that the CA is that has published the template. The CA is also a enterprise CA for the root CA in the domain. This root CA is a root CA for the domain. Also, the CA is trusted to perform NT authentication because it is referenced by this object, the NT auth certificate store or NT auth store. This object is the NT auth store for the domain. So all those things combined, plus the particular configurations on this template, which allow you to specify a subject alternate name, and it doesn't have manager approval required, it doesn't require authorized signatures, etc. BloodHound has done all the calculations for you in order to surface this escalation 1 edge. And so this doesn't rely on any defaults. We don't make any assumptions. It's totally agnostic to however the environment has been configured. So whatever has happened in that particular environment, if an escalation 1 primitive exists, BloodHound will find it, and it will make it easy for you to discover and to execute or audit that attack path and make sure that it's valid. Get DA and then go on with your day. These different edges as well, you can click on them and get some help information that will help you understand, like, what does this mean? You know, if it's not clear, or, you know, as we're rolling this out and as you're starting to use this, you'll start to understand these things, you know, automatically. There are other features coming as well that will let you easily understand who has control of a template, who has enrollment rights on a particular template. Also, we are working to get escalation 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10 out there as quickly as we can. Escalation 5 has melted my brain, and it is now leaking out onto my shoulder. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Stephen.
Thanks, Andy. That was awesome. I'm really excited for this. Got some good questions. We'll cover some more. And just so everybody's aware, Andy and Jonas are going to have another webinar specifically focused on ADCS that will cover more kind of in-depth topics in a couple of weeks. I want to say it's on December 7th.
That sounds right.
So there will be more. We just wanted to, in this time, give everybody a preview of what's coming. So what Andy just covered, specifically ESC1, is going to be, fingers crossed, quality to be confirmed. Should be releasing sometime next week. We are hoping for Wednesday, Thursday. Now, if we can't get things to where we want them, that'll get pushed out, but that's our goal. So hopefully early access version 1 will be out next week. There will be a feature flag for this. So for folks who, if we do find issues, it's early access. There's some complex stuff going on here. Underneath the administrative panel in the environment, you'll be able to turn that flag on or off to decide whether or not those ESC1 edges will get post-processed into your environment. We're going to be rolling this out in a few different steps. Early access 2, we're targeting the end of the year, will probably be the week of December 11th. We will be going into kind of our holiday hibernation at SpectraOps. And so if we miss that week, it won't be till the early next year. But with that, we should be adding in ESC 3, 4, 6, 9, 10, as well as DPersist 1, which is the golden certificate path. And then in January, February, should get 5 and 7 in there, and then we'll GA the functionality, so you won't need that feature flag any longer. This is kind of what we're looking at. Any feedback, anybody who tests things out, finds problems, please let us know. We will be available in the Bloodhound Gang Slack as usual. So, let us know what you find. Happy to help. We're looking forward to getting this into everybody's hands. All right. Looking forward beyond what Andy just showed. We've got more to do, even in ADCS. So Andy just mentioned like ESC5 is currently melting his brain onto his shoulders and floor. This is really complex. We've got paths on most of the escalation paths that were identified in the original certified pre-owned white paper. There's a couple of them listed here, 8 and 11, that need some additional work because we need to expand collection and figure out the best way to represent NTLM relay within the graph, which is going to get real fun as Microsoft's working on sunsetting that technology altogether. We've also, through this work, identified potentially other escalation findings, or you saw in that list of edges, there's the A, B, C, D, etc. There are other potential transmutations of existing paths that we've identified that we'll continue to work on. We do intend to update the white paper as we go through this with updated information, expectations, things we found, all that good stuff. So there's more to be done here. It's super duper complex, and we're excited to get that out to everybody. General availability of Community Edition. We are real close. So in order for us to consider a general availability, we wanted to be able to have largely feature parity with Bloodhound Legacy. I actually just found out our next release might not have that group management section in it. That might get kicked to the next one, but in next release, we'll have custom saved queries. So you'll be able to save the things that you use over and over and over again. And then we have mark as owned and zip upload support that should be part of that end-of-year release. That'll be that same EA2 release. And so same caveat applies. If we miss, we've got the holiday hibernation that'll go into January. But we are towards the end of those missing pieces from the migration from the legacy product. With that, we will deprecate the old repo. I think everybody largely has found the new one already, but we'll make sure that everything gets pointed there, make sure it's easy to find and all that. Looking forward past that, we will continue to do what we do. We've got the ADCS stuff that I just mentioned, whether it be the existing paths or additional opportunities we found. We do have a very strong desire early next year to connect those two graphs so that those two different circles that make John sad because they're already complex, we're going to try and make John even more sad. And by that, we're going to make John really happy because we're going to give him really big, hard problems to solve. But we want to connect those two graphs, and I'm looking forward to that. And then we do have a lot of opportunities still in Azure. It is a large and complex beast, and Microsoft changes it every day, every week. And we're looking forward to doing some more in there. And then I did want to highlight what Andy showed at the end of the video, that ability to understand the composition of a post-process edge. We do intend to bring that back to all of our other edges. So some of these are really complex. All of the ESC edges are very complex. They require a lot of different things to be true in order for a path to exist. But this would still be really nice on other things like DC sync, right? Somebody has DC sync to the domain. How did they get that? Sometimes it's just direct all up, right? They have get changes all. But sometimes it goes through multiple layers of group nesting. And so we do want to bring this into the product as a general pattern that we support, where if you have a post-process edge that relies on multiple things being true, that we can explain that to you so you can just click and see, oh, they have this permission because of ABC reason. All right. I'll start out and say thank you, everyone, for joining. Andy, thanks for walking through that demo.
Yeah.
Jonas, you've been crushing it on questions already.
Yeah.
Let's see here. There's some that we have answered already that I might kind of go back through. Couple of questions for folks around running Cypher queries and adding additional capability there, or being able to kind of update flags. We do have, so Jonas shared in there how to expose Neo4j through Docker so that you can get access to that directly. We do also plan to expand the capabilities available within the browser, whether that being expanded, kind of disabling the checks that we have for mutability of the database, or adding things like being able to return specific properties as opposed to full nodes. So we've got some more plans there, kind of coming into next year.
Here's a good question from Ian. He says, what is a common purpose for an org to have ADCS in an environment? So that's a really good question. There are several different services or technologies that require PKI to be deployed, whether that is ADCS or whether it's a different certificate management or PKI solution. So one of the more common ones would be smart card authentication in Active Directory that requires PKI to be set up. And so you could do that with ADCS. You could do it with a different PKI solution. Code signing, having internal web servers have TLS certificates that will be trusted internally. A lot of organizations will use ADCS for that as well. I think those are probably like the most common, I would say, from my perspective.
Yeah, the two that I've seen is an internal CA to sign things without having to pay for certificates, and then 802.1x device authentication, the common ones that I've seen. Let's see here. There's an answer about a kind of a quote unquote problem where you see an attack path that only goes through get changes and there's not a get changes all. Andy or Jonas, you want to dig into that real quick?
Sure. I think that's actually kind of related to what we're doing with the ADCS attack paths. So as that person mentioned, you need both get changes and get changes all in order to perform a DC sync attack. So what we do right now in BloodHound is that we have this thing called post-processing, where we take all the information that we already have, upload it into the database, and build some extra edges. So for example, we produce this edge called DC sync that will show up only if you have both get changes and get changes all. So you can say that from when you're doing path finding, you can actually just filter out all the get changes and get changes all if you're just looking for a chain or attack path to compromise the domain. And we will do that, like this concept, a lot in the future. So the escalation 1 edge that Andy showed today is another example of that. It's just with a lot more edges going into it. So there's more like of these supporting edges that's not directly abusable, but information that we need in order to build something that can be abused.
Yeah.
Responding to one real quick, somebody asked about that one-liner and will that get you the newest features? So that one-liner will pull a temporary version of the Docker Compose YAML that you need in order to run the full stack that gets pulled into that Docker Compose up. If you want something that runs kind of more long-term, you'd actually want to pull that YAML file down all the way, not just pull it into memory. And I'll share the command in the answers responses, but once you're running off Docker Compose, the nice thing is that that an upgrade is basically a could be another one line command of Docker Compose pull and Docker Compose up, and it will go through and restart all of the containers with the new fresh bits that you just pulled down.
You want to say, sorry for that. You want to say 5 more minutes for any questions to come in?
Let's do it.
All right.
5 more minutes.
Just a housekeeping note. We want to say thank you for joining us and thank you for spending your time with us today. And this was recorded. The recording will be available at the same link as the webinar registration. It'll be available by tomorrow or the day after. I saw somebody ask about the slide deck being available. I don't know if, Stephen, did you already have a plan to share the slide deck out there?
I don't have a specific plan. If somebody really is interested in the slide deck separately, feel free to send us a note.
Yeah.
I'm happy to. There's nothing particularly notable or special why we couldn't share it. Happy to, but yeah, if somebody wants it, feel free to reach out. We're happy to send it to you. Let's see here. Yusuf question around how to close the gap between cloud and on-prem. There's a myriad of different options, starting with things like password sync, password write back. A very simple example of something that we could look at where we could connect those graphs. But there is more, so much more. Austin, question about that composition feature. So initially, that composition feature needs to be developed for each path on its own. So as we release the ADCS paths, we are building that with it. We will have to go through an effort to go back to older paths in order to build that in. So things like DC sync, CAN RDP, etc. We'll need to build those out. Somebody asked about Python ingester supported with BloodHound CE. There's actually a couple questions around collection with different mechanisms outside SharpHound. So BloodHound CE uses a standard JSON structure just like BloodHound Legacy did. There is a slight variation between the two that is enough that tools that were previously collecting specifically local group and session information will not work with BloodHound CE. If those tools are updated to support that syntax, they'll work just fine. Again, it is just JSON structured data. But anything that's largely doing like the AD structure, collecting things from Active Directory about the users, groups, OUs, containers, etc., that syntax remains the same. So that's kind of the one caveat there. You could absolutely write your own or update old tools to continue to work with CE that worked with Legacy, but they do need to make sure they use the updated JSON structure that we require.
This question says, any thoughts about integration with Crack Map Exec? So our intent with BloodHound is to have the API for BloodHound be as robust and as well documented as possible so that anything can integrate with BloodHound. Not only from being able to read information from BloodHound, but also with other tools being able to put data into BloodHound. So I guess the answer with like CME compatibility would be yes, just like anything else, because anything that can speak JSON, we want to be able to support integration with, or for you to be able to build your own integrations with BloodHound and other tools.
All right. I think we're getting there.
This question says, will edge filtering still be possible? Yes, edge filtering is in BloodHound CE. So I can show you where it is. So when you're in pathfinding right here, if I do like demo user to the domain admins group. So I have like ADCS escalation 1 contains. This is the edge filtering button right here. And so click on this and it will let you list out what edges you want to include or not. So let's say that you don't want to do ADCS attacks. You can expand this out and you can uncheck these one by one, or you can just uncheck the entire category. So if I uncheck the entire category, when I hit apply, it's going to rerun that search. There may not be a path, but we'll see. And there's not. Yeah. So that feature is there. I might be able to show you. So generic all and owns. So let's re-enable this. Let's get rid of generic all and owns and see if domain admins has a different path there. Yeah. So you can filter out edges in that way. It's this button right here. Ooh, add key credential link. Can we ban Justin Kohler from the Zoom? Thank you. Why don't we wrap it up here? And again, we will say thank you for spending your time with us. And we're excited to get this out there. We hope that you use it. We hope that you find attack paths and that you clean them up. And we hope that ADCS attack paths become a thing of the past, just like every other kind of attack path. That's kind of our mission with this whole tool is let's find all the attack paths so that we can get rid of them and then move on to more interesting things in security. So thank you and hope everybody has a nice day. Jonas, Stephen, do you guys want to say anything before we quit?
Yeah, thanks for all the great questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks everyone. Really appreciate it. Again, hopefully targeting next week that we'll have this out and about. The BloodHound Gang Slack is the best way to have a conversation with us, ask questions, share things that you find, issues that you find or run into. Happy to help. All of us are in there, as well as a good chunk of our engineering and customer success teams. So, and lots of folks that are outside of Spectre Ops who know a lot about BloodHound and are fantastic and helpful individuals. So any questions, that's definitely the place to be.
Yep. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.